Yo, let's get right into it. So I'm going to be predicting every single fight for UFC 313, giving my quick prediction and breakdown for every single fight. So let's start off with the first fight of the night. It's going to be Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda. I'm going to take Chris Gutierrez here. John Castaneda is not a bad fighter, but he tends to lose to a certain type of opponent. If you look at his last three losses, he lost to Daniel Marcos, Daniel Santos, and Nathaniel Wood. All those guys are very technical strikers. They're very good and they're very technical. And I think that's how I would describe Chris Gutierrez. He's a very good technical striker. He has some of the best leg kicks in the UFC. And he's super good at using his rangy striking style to slow down the fight and pick apart his opponent. So I think this is a great matchup for Chris Gutierrez. John Castaneda will go for takedowns at times, but he's only landing them at like a 35% clip. And Chris Gutierrez has relatively good takedown defense. I think he defends around 75% of the time. So I imagine this fight will stay standing. And Chris Gutierrez is probably just going to land a ton of leg kicks, slow down the fight, and just pick him apart from range. So I think I'm going to take Chris Gutierrez from decision. He tends to get a lot of decisions. He doesn't really knock out a lot of his opponents. So yeah, Castaneda has a great chin, so I don't think he's going to get knocked out. So I'm going to take Chris Gutierrez. Let's move on up the card. Next, we have Ozzy Diaz versus Djorden Santos. I'm not going to lie, I don't really care about this fight. It's a very low-level fight. I don't know too much about these guys. But if you look at Ozzy Diaz's recent fights, his last win was against Bevon Lewis, who was 7-4 at the time, and he's now 7-6. You know, he beat a 6-3 Chuck Campbell. He's winning, he's beating very low-level competition and tends to lose to anybody who's slightly above that. And Djorden Santos does seem to be maybe a little bit above that level, at least at this point. Even though like he's not beating very good guys either. Djorden Santos fought 3 times in 2021, but he was fighting guys like Miguel Firmino, who was 3-0 at the time, who's now 9-6. He fought a 16 or a 6-14 guy before that, and then a 1-4 guy before that. So he was fighting very low competition, low level competition before that as well. He only fought once in 2022 against Felipe Moutinho, who was 8-2, and then he nearly took 2 years off before his fight last year in 2024 in the Contender Series. He beat Will Curry, who was 12-3. Will Curry was a huge favorite, actually. Djorden Santos won as like a 3-1 underdog, so that's a pretty good look for him. So I don't know what he did in those 2 years off, but he seemed to improve a lot. He's fighting a little bit better competition, and he's only 27 years old, so he was probably improving. I don't know, maybe he was injured. I really have no idea, but he seemed to improve. He seemed to get better. Maybe he got his goals straight. So yeah, and he's pretty well rounded as well. He has 3 knockouts on his record, 4 submissions, a few by decision as well. So he can win in any way. And Ozzy Diaz, to me, is just, he's very low level and he seems to lose to anybody who's a little bit above that. So I'll take Djorden Santos, probably by decision. You know, I don't know. Ozzy Diaz has got knocked out 3 times in his career, so maybe I'll take Djorden Santos by knockout. He seems to be improving. He has more momentum. He took that time off, and he's been doing better since then. So I'll take Djorden Santos by knockout, actually, against Ozzy Diaz. All right, let's move on up the card. Let's continue. This is now the fights are getting a little bit better at this point. So we have Mairon Santos versus Francis Marshall. I'm going to take Mairon Santos in this fight. I do think that the odds are a little crazy because Francis Marshall is a 3-1 underdog. I don't think those odds are correct. I think Francis Marshall is definitely better than the odds suggest. And I think Mairon Santos, although I think he's very good, I do think that he still is unproven in a lot of ways. He's only had 1 fight in the UFC, but I am going to take him here because he won his the Ultimate Fighter Championship, and then he made his UFC debut against Con Alfie. Now, Con Alfie isn't the greatest fighter in the world, but he does have some good wins on his record. He's 31 years old, so he does have experience. And Mairon Santos was piecing him up on the feet. He has great leg kicks, great body kicks, great distance control, and he's just an overall very good dynamic striker. But the thing that really impressed me the most with Mairon Santos is despite him being only 24 years old, he stayed so composed in that fight. Like, you don't see that very often. You'll see guys who have plenty of experience come in and make their UFC debut, and they come in, they have jitters. You can tell they're very nervous. They're throwing out all sorts of wild shots. Their defense isn't very good. Mairon Santos came in as a 24-year-old UFC debut, and he looked like a veteran out there. I was very impressed with his performance. I was very impressed by his performance, and so I'm going to take him in this fight. Francis Marshall, I wouldn't say that he's great anywhere, but he's just decent pretty much everywhere. Like, he's a decent grappler. He's a decent boxer. He actually does have some power in his shots. We saw him go up against Denis Buzukja in his last fight. He ended up winning that fight, but he did get knocked down. I believe he knocked down Denis Buzukja, but then Denis Buzukja ended up making kind of a comeback. Maybe he did knock down Francis Marshall. It was a back and forth fight. It was a pretty close fight. So I think Francis Marshall, if he's going to want to win this fight, he's probably going to have to try to push him up against the cage, because Mairon Santos, I think if it's just on the feet, he's going to piece up Francis Marshall. But Francis Marshall's not bad. He's aggressive. He's not scared to take shots, to give a shot. And, he does have some power in his hands. So I expect Mairon Santos, though, his composure to be the thing that wins it here. He's going to stay composed. He's very defensively aware. He's always keeping his hands up, has a nice guard, and he's very good at counterpunching as well. He had really good counter punches against Alfie. Alfie would rush in, go for takedowns. Mairon Santos had great takedown defense. So I think this fight will stay standing, and I think Mairon Santos will probably beat Francis Marshall by decision. Francis Marshall does have a good chin. He can take shots, and he's very tough. He does tend to slow down, though, in the later rounds, like in the third round. He did slow down against Denis Buzukja, and we saw that against him in some other fights. He also slowed down. So I think Mairon Santos, I could see a knockout here, maybe in the third round, but I'm going to take him by decision. I think Francis Marshall is good enough to survive, and I think he is good enough to get off his own offense a little bit. But man, Mairon Santos, he's only 24. He'll be improving massively as well, but his ability to stay calm, especially under pressure, like, he's just going to get better and better. He's going to get more confident. So I was very impressed with him. And Marshall, like, he struggles against good strikers. He beat he lost to Gomez, who had really good feints, kept his range. Denis Buzukja, he got dropped bad. Yeah, so I just think Francis Marshall is definitely levels down from Mairon Santos' striking. So I'm going to take Mairon Santos, but I think Francis Marshall is going to survive. So Mairon Santos by decision. All right, let's move on up the card. We got Carlos Leal versus Alex Morono. Man, Carlos Leal made his UFC debut against Rinat Fakhretdinov. And Rinat Fakhretdinov, I don't know that he is as good as the hype that was on him, because he did have a lot of hype. But he is a great fighter. He has some power. He's a good wrestler. He has good grappling. And Carlos Leal came in on short notice, made his UFC debut, and he beat Rinat Fakhretdinov. Even though Rinat got the win, everyone sort of agreed after that Carlos Leal definitely won that fight. But I think also the consensus is that Carlos Leal might be on steroids, because for one, he's big. He's very, very big. And he went all 3 rounds and he didn't tire out. Like, he got maybe a little tired in the third round, but he kept coming forward, throwing tons of shots. He threw so many shots in that fight. So he threw like 250 shots, I believe, in a 3-rounder. It was very fast paced, and he did not really slow down. So I think Carlos Leal going up against someone like Alex Morono, I think Alex Morono is just not built to beat someone like Carlos Leal. Alex Morono's crafty. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been around for a very long time, and he does have some good jiu-jitsu. Like, he can throw up submissions. But if Carlos Leal isn't scared of what Rinat Fakhretdinov has to offer him, I don't think he's going to care at all what Alex Morono, who has a flabby belly, bouncing around on the balls of his feet, doesn't have a lot of power, doesn't really have a ton to offer on the feet in terms of damage. Like, he could try to outpoint Carlos Leal, but we saw what he did against Rinat Fakhretdinov. Like, he has tons of power. He was shrugging off Rinat Fakhretdinov when he would come in. I think Rinat got him down a couple times. Carlos Leal got right back up, and then the rest of the time he just stuffed the takedowns very easily. So I don't think Alex Morono is going to be able to get this fight to the ground. And Carlos Leal, like, he took some massive shots. His chin is amazing. He got hit by some really, really big shots by Rinat Fakhretdinov, and he just looked at him like, what the hell was that? Did someone just hit me? Like, his chin is amazing. And he also rolls with shots really well. I think that's a big reason why his chin looked amazing, that he rolls with shots. Alex Morono doesn't hit nearly as hard as Rinat Fakhretdinov. You know, he's a little crafty striker on the outside. I could see him landing a few shots here and there, but I think for the most part, Carlos is just going to come forward and knock him out. So that's what I'm going to take. I think I'm going to take him by first round knockout. I kind of feel bad because Alex Morono, like, I don't know, I always make fun of him when he fights because he just doesn't look like someone who should be in a cage fighting another man, but he's in there and he wins fights. So I'm going to take Carlos Leal by first round knockout. All right, let's move on up the card. We got Armen Petrosyan versus Brunno Ferreira. I have seen a lot of people take Brunno Ferreira in this fight, and it makes sense because when I first saw this fight, I thought, okay, Brunno's going to knock them out. Like, every time Brunno goes up against somebody who doesn't have tons of power, he's just gonna swing around, get the knockout. But the more I looked into it, I think Brunno Ferreira, man, he's okay. He does have some power, but his power isn't that amazing. Like, I've noticed he'll hit people with clean shots and they might get rocked, but they have the ability to survive. Like, if you can just kind of avoid a couple follow-up shots, you can survive his power. And I don't see Armen Petrosyan getting put out here, because Armen does have a decent chin. He did get put out in his last fight against Shera Magomedov. He did get put out by Shera Magomedov, but, you know, he got hit by like a double back fist spinning something. Like, it was a crazy shot that you don't really see coming. I've never seen a knockout like that. So it was more of an unexpected shot. And Shera Magomedov kind of walked away after he knocked him down, and he walked away with his hands raised like he just knocked him out cold. But Armen did cover up. It's not like Armen Petrosyan was out cold. I actually think, and you know, the ref stopped the fight and Armen Petrosyan seemed to be fine with it. But yeah, he didn't get knocked out cold. I don't think he's going to come in here with like a compromised chin or anything. And man, he's pretty good on the feet. He has very, very good leg kicks. He's good at picking people apart from range, and I just don't know that Brunno Ferreira, you know, we saw him struggle with the range against Abus Magomedov. Fair play, he does have, Abus is kind of really big for the weight class and he has a long reach. But Brunno Ferreira, like, we've seen him struggle against other guys as well. And he's a guy that kind of stays on the outside, bounces around, and then he'll kind of rush in for some shots. But if he doesn't get the shots that he wants, he tends to slow down, and he's not going to knock you out with one punch. He could rock you and then land some follow-up shots. But Armen Petrosyan, for the most part, he has a pretty good chin. He also fights at a very fast pace, and I think if he can fight a fast pace, chop at the leg kicks, and just try to pick apart Brunno Ferreira from range, I think he's gonna win. And so, like, I think also, Armen Petrosyan, we've seen him, if he does get rocked, like we saw him against Gregory Rodriguez, he was able to push him up against the cage to sort of minimize the threat of getting knocked out. So I think he could do that against Brunno Ferreira here if he needs to, but he's going to be the way better striker in my opinion. I think he's going to chop at those leg kicks, and I think he's going to take him to a decision. Brunno Ferreira, if he can't get the knockout in the first round, I don't see him getting it in the second or the third. His power decreases significantly round after round. And I just don't think Brunno Ferreira is really that good. It's like he needs to get the knockout. He relies on getting a knockout or a finish. And if he can't get it, he kind of turns into a pumpkin. So I'm going to say that Armen Petrosyan wins this fight by decision. That's going to be my official pick. Moving on up the card, we have Rei Tsuruya versus Joshua Van. I'm going to take Joshua Van here. He was supposed to fight Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva got dropped from the card, and so Rei Tsuruya is stepping in, and I don't think he's ready for a guy like Joshua Van. Rei Tsuruya, like, yeah, he has okay, you know, he's pretty good at grappling. Like, he can kind of grab certain submissions. Like, we saw in his last fight against Carlos Hernandez was his last fight. Yeah, against Carlos Hernandez, he was able to get the fight to the ground at points and try to lock up certain submissions, but really he didn't come close. I really don't think he's anything too special right now. He's very young. He's 22 years old. Joshua Van is very young, but Joshua Van has way more experience. And if Joshua Van can just keep this fight on the feet, which I think he's going to be able to because he has very good takedown defense, he has very good sprawls. He's not too big for the division, but he's, you know, people aren't able just to get off their wrestling very well on Joshua Van. So if Joshua Van can stuff the takedowns early, I think he's going to piece up Rei Tsuruya, who has really nothing to offer on the feet. The only thing he could do is try to get a submission on the ground. His wrestling's not that good. He's not very good at getting fights to the ground, in my opinion. You know, at least against decent competition. Against low-level competition, sure, he can get the fight to the ground. But Joshua Van, like, he lands nearly 9 significant strikes per minute. He has a takedown defense of 81%. He stuffed two of 8 takedowns against Cody Djorden, which I believe is a really good guy to sort of test your takedown defense against. And he has really good boxing in close range. So if Rei Tsuruya comes in to try to take him down, he's not going to be able to land anything of substance on the feet. And I think Joshua Van is just going to start piecing him up, probably get a knockout. I know that Rei Tsuruya is undefeated. He's 10-0. But Joshua Van picks up as the fight goes on as well. He has nasty combinations. He rips to the body, goes back upstairs. Man, he makes great adjustments between rounds as well. Yeah, so I'm going to pick him to probably knock out Rei Tsuruya. Joshua Van's going to really start to get going in the second and third round. So I'm going to take him by a second round knockout. It's going to be my pick. Joshua Van better win this fight. I really want to see him get a fight in the rankings, like against a Brunno Silva. So I really hope he just wins his fight and then gets a fight in the rankings afterwards, because I think he deserves it. He's a really good contender, and he's really fun to watch as well. I mean, he throws so much volume. Just go back through his fights. He's throwing like 200-300 strikes every fight in a 3-rounder, and he doesn't seem to slow down. He has great cardio. I don't think Rei Tsuruya is ready for this type of competition yet. So yeah, Joshua Van, second round knockout is going to be the official pick. All right, let's move on up the card. We have Rizvan Kuniev versus Curtis Blaydes. I don't think that Rizvan Kuniev should be in this position at all. I don't know why the UFC signed him. He comes in his UFC debut. He's a known steroid abuser. He fought Renan Ferreira in the PFL, won that fight by decision, looked like a fat slob. And it was found out that he was on 4 different banned substances. So that fight got turned to a no contest, and the UFC signed him. I don't know why they did. He's a known steroid user, and he still looked like a fat slob in that fight. Like, this guy looks like he chugged a bunch of beers before his fight. He's bloated to the gills, and he's not a good fighter, in my opinion. I watched that fight with Renan Ferreira. He just kind of laid on top of him a lot of the times, pushed him up against the clinch, was able to get to the fight to the ground, and then just laid on top of him like a fat piece of shit, dude. That's what he was doing. And Bruno Ferreira was able to get on top of him, and when Renan Ferreira was able to get on top of Rizvan Kuniev had nothing to offer from the bottom. He just laid there, and he looked like he was kind of slowing down despite him being on tons of steroids. And yeah, dude, if you look at his record, he has a few knockouts on his record, but if you look at his opposition, he's fighting Hugo Cunha, 8-1. Anthony Hamilton, who was 18-10 at the time. He's now 21-12. Edevan Santos, 12-2 at the time, who's now 17-7. And then look, in 2020, he went to a decision with a Ruud Vernoy, who was 6-4 at the time. He's now 6-6. That was in 2020. And if you look at Blaydes in 2020, he was fighting guys like Alexander Volkov. So Rizvan Kuniev fighting pretty low-level competition compared to Curtis Blaydes. And I think it's a disgrace that the UFC signed this guy. And not that they just signed him, but that they're giving number 5 ranked heavyweight in the world, Curtis Blaydes. Like, I think that's a disgrace to the sport. I hope Curtis Blaydes comes in here and knocks Kuniev out cold. And I think he will. Blaydes is going to have a big reach advantage in this fight. And honestly, Blaydes is someone who, if a couple guys didn't exist in the division, Curtis Blaydes would be champion. I really believe that. He is a great wrestler. He's pretty good on the feet. He has tons of power. And I think unless you're a really good striker with fight-ending power, like Aspinall or Derek Lewis, or like Sergey Pavlovich, Curtis Blaydes is going to beat you unless you're one of those guys. He tends to struggle with the power. And I don't think he's going to be scared of Rizvan Kuniev's power. I don't think he's very powerful. I don't think he has much to offer on the ground or on the feet. And Curtis Blaydes was catching Tom Aspinall with a few really good shots. I was actually a little nervous for Aspinall during a couple sequences because Curtis Blaydes came in, landed some really good shots. Aspinall, he's quick. He has a great chin. He was able to recover and land his shots of his own and knock out Curtis Blaydes. But I think Tom Aspinall is by far the best guy in the division. Yeah, better than John Jones. I think John Jones can suck it, dude, and he can leave the division. Anyways, yeah, Blaydes has some pretty quick hands. He has good power, and I think he's going to knock out Rizvan Kuniev. I don't know why they're bringing him to the UFC. I think this is stupid. It's a stupid fight, but it should be on the main card. I think it should be on the main card over Lemos and what's her face. So yeah, if Rizvan's not on steroids anymore, which presumably he's not, I would imagine he comes in looking in the worst shape of his career. He's going to look like a fat piece of shit even more. He's not going to have any cardio. He looks like he's allergic to cardio. Just look at pictures of him. He just looks like he wouldn't touch cardio in his life, which is probably why he was taking a ton of substances. So I hope Curtis Blaydes messes this guy up. I think he is. And I'm going to take him by first round KO. I think Rizvan Kuniev sucks. Yep. Anyways, let's move on up the card. We have Mauricio Ruffy versus Bobby Green. I'm going to take Mauricio Ruffy in this fight, and I'm going to take him by knockout. I think that this guy is very, very good. He does really look like a Conor McGregor on the feet. He's very slick. The way that he moves around, and he tries to get his backhand set up for a big shot. In his last fight against James Lontop was, I actually thought when I first watched it live, and I thought, man, this Lontop guy is really giving him hell. And then I rewatched the fight, and Mauricio Ruffy really, he messed up James Lontop. Like, he schooled him in that fight. Upon rewatching it, I realized it really wasn't close. A lot of people were saying it was a close fight. I thought it was pretty obvious that Mauricio won. James Lontop's eyes were one of his eyes was nearly swollen shut. He got rocked on several occasions. And you have these big, like, Latin American guys who just have these otherworldly chins that you cannot knock out. And that's sort of James Lontop. He's just super tough, has an amazing chin, isn't super skilled, but his toughness is going to get him through some fights. And Mauricio Ruffy was able to knock him down on a couple of occasions. And I think also, like, that fight was taken on short notice, and James Lontop came in. It was actually a catch weight at 165. So I think that's going to help your durability. It's going to help your cardio. So, even though Ruffy did slow down in that fight, I think Mauricio Ruffy is going to be fine in this fight against someone like Bobby Green. He knows that this fight is going to stay on the feet. Bobby Green probably is not going to go for takedowns. He's gone for takedowns in fights, but it's not very often. And Bobby Green, for the most part, wants to keep the fight standing because he's a striker as well. He's a very quick striker. And, his Bobby Green, like, he keeps his hands way too low, and it's just his style. He keeps his hands low, and he kind of rushes in, and he'll throw the jab. But when he comes in, he keeps his chin up in the air all the time. And Mauricio Ruffy, we saw in his fights against, who did he fight? Mauricio Ruffy in his last fight against Lontop, of course. But then he also fought, who's that Australian guy? He fought Jamie Malarkey in that fight. That was his UFC debut. Mauricio Ruffy has very, very good counter strikes. Like, people will rush in, and he will throw a great counter strike. He has great leg kicks. And I think against someone like Bobby Green, who keeps his hands down and kind of rushes in to throw jabs, like, Bobby Green, his defense is not very good. He keeps getting rocked in his fights, and he keeps getting knocked down. We saw Bobby Green, of course, in his last fight, he lost by submission to Paddy Pimblett. Fair play. Paddy Pimblett is a good submission guy, but Paddy Pimblett was chopping Bobby Green's legs up bad in that fight. That fight only lasted like 4 minutes, but Paddy Pimblett landed some very, very good leg kicks. He was chewing up those legs. And Bobby Green he keeps getting dropped. Like, he got dropped by Tony Ferguson 2 years ago. He, of course, got dropped and knocked out by Jalin Turner, went all jelly-legged. And that fight, when Jalin Turner landed those shots, like, it wasn't the biggest of shots. And Bobby Green went all jelly-legged, man. And, he's very quick on the feet. He gets really cocky, though. And I think Mauricio Ruffy is the perfect guy to just land some counter shots, chew up those leg kicks. And I think he's going to knock out Bobby Green. I think Bobby Green's chin is kind of gone. He's 38 years old. in the lightweight division. And I think Mauricio Ruffy, I think these Fighting Nerds guys are very good. I don't know what they're doing over there, but they have a really good training camp. They're very technical. And Mauricio Ruffy has a very, very good chin. We've seen him get cracked by some big shots, and he ate them like they were nothing. And Bobby Green doesn't have the best power. He's more of a volume guy. And I don't think he's going to be able to get off his volume against someone like Mauricio Ruffy. So I'm going to take Mauricio Ruffy by knockout. I don't know if it's going to happen early on or later in the fight. I think Bobby Green, I think he's going to start throwing some shots, and he's going to start emoting around, start talking some trash. And that's going to be the perfect time for Mauricio Ruffy to land a knockout. So I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but I'm going to say Mauricio Ruffy by knockout. It's going to be the official pick. All right, moving on up the card, we have Amanda Lemos versus Iasmin Lucindo. Why is this on the main card? Seriously, why isn't Curtis Blaydes on the main card? I don't like Rizvan Kuniev, but that fight should be on the main card over this one. I don't get it, man. This is going to be a great time to take a break. I don't care about this fight. Amanda Lemos is like 38 years old. Iasmin Lucindo is very young. She's 23, but she has more fights under her belt. And I'm just going to go with the younger fighter. Amanda Lemos, I think her power is a little overrated. You know, she had a lot of power back, you know, earlier in her career, but recently, I don't think that she really has that power. It's not translating at the higher level. So yeah, I mean, Mackenzie Dern was able to take a lot of her shots, and Mackenzie Dern, I don't think Mackenzie Dern has the best chin. Iasmin Lucindo, she's okay. She just beat Marina Rodriguez, split decision. You know, she's not beating world beaters. I don't like that win. I don't like that that's her last win, and it was a split decision against Marina Rodriguez. Dude, women's MMA is just flip a coin. I'm just going to take Amanda Lemos because she has more experience, and Iasmin Lucindo seems like she's going to... I don't know. I honestly don't care. Just give me Iasmin Lucindo. She's younger. Amanda Lemos, I don't think he's going to knock her out. And if she can't do that, I think Iasmin Lucindo is going to win by decision. All right, screw that. Let's move on up the card. We have Jalin Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. I like this fight a lot. I think this is great matchmaking. Jalin Turner, you know, both of these guys, they always have the physicality advantage. They're always taller, rangier than their opponents in the lightweight division. They're both 6'3", which is just insane. So I'm glad they're matching them up against each other. We can see who is going to be the better, taller, rangier fighter here. And I think it's going to be Ignacio Bahamondes. I don't think he's more technical than Jalin Turner. I think Jalin Turner is quite technical for the most part. But there's one difference, and I think that difference is Jalin Turner, he kind of gives up in fights. He kind of just folds. When things don't go his way, Jalin Turner just kind of folds. Like we saw against Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker was getting pieced up by Jalin Turner in the first round. He was getting pieced up. Jalin Turner was staying at range very, very well. And Dan Hooker is a taller guy, you know, for the division. He's like 6 foot, 6'1". And Jalin Turner was able to pick him apart at range, land some really good shots. And then he landed a nasty head kick on Dan Hooker. And I have no idea how Dan Hooker took that shot. It was a flush head kick right to the dome. And that kind of woke Dan Hooker up. And after that, we saw Dan Hooker come out in the second round, at the end of the second round, start throwing some punches, started pressuring Jalin Turner. And as soon as that happened, Jalin Turner just started to fold. Like he was pressuring Dan Hooker. He was able to pick him apart. And then it's like he couldn't get the finish. Dan Hooker started pouring it on because he was kind of desperate. And then that's when Jalin Turner just started to fold. It's like it didn't go his way for a second. So he kind of just said, all right, hit me in the face. And didn't Dan Hooker, he said he broke his arm like in the first or second round in that fight. Like, come on, man. Jalin Turner, you can't beat this guy who had a broken arm. Dan Hooker is tough as hell. And I love Dan Hooker as a fighter. Man, I wish he was on this card. But yeah, like Jalin Turner just kind of folded. And we saw the same thing against Renato Moicano. Money Moicano. We saw the same thing against him. He was doing very good. He landed a body shot on Moicano in like the first 15 seconds. Started pressuring him. Moicano took him down and was able to have a lot of control time. And then when they got back up at the end of the first round, Jalin Turner landed a nasty left hand, dropped Moicano bad, and then raised his hands like he had just won the fight. And the ref didn't stop it. And Moicano was completely there. He was awake. He just got back up and started pressuring Jalin Turner. The round ends. The second round starts. Moicano comes out and he starts pressuring Jalin Turner right away. And Jalin Turner just folded. Moicano was able to get him down, got him down, started landing some really nice ground and pound, kind of just controlled it at first, and then started landing some really nice ground and pound. And Jalin Turner just kind of accepted the loss. Like, I don't really like that for him. And we've seen that in other fights as well. When things don't go his way, when he gets pressured, he kind of folds. And he's a tall guy, he's a big dude, and he kind of turns into a small guy in those situations. If he gets kind of bullied around, he just sort of gives up. And we've seen Ignacio Bahamondes in his recent fights. He is tough as hell. He's willing to fight through adversity, and he's not going to give up. And so I think that's going to be the difference in this fight. In his last fight, Manuel Torres, very dangerous contender. He's knocking out everybody. He's finishing fights all the time. Ignacio Bahamondes looked incredible in that fight. You could tell he was setting up these counter shots beautifully. Manuel Torres would come in, who has tons of power, very dangerous. Ignacio Bahamondes stood his ground, landed some really slick counter shots, and ended up getting the knockout in the first round against Manuel Torres. Knocked out Christos Giagos with a head kick just before that. Went to war with Ludovic Klein, and I think that win is aging pretty well at this point. Went to war. That was a very close fight, but he stuck in there, man. He got rocked on so many occasions, even in the third round, and he kept coming forward. He kept trying to make things happen. He did not give up. He didn't fold like Jalin Turner did. And I just think that Ignacio Bahamondes has looked really, really good recently, and I think Jalin Turner has looked really bad recently. Like, I like Renato Moicano, but if he's doing that to you, getting you on the ground like that when he got injured in the first 10 seconds, like he took a body kick that clearly not injured him necessarily, but it definitely hurt him. Like, his last win, Jalin Turner, was Bobby Green. Bobby Green was 37 years old at that time. Lost to Dan Hooker, lost to Mateusz Gamrot. Yeah, you know, these guys are high-level guys, but then you kind of go down in the rankings to Renato Moicano in his last fight, and he loses. And I just think Ignacio Bahamondes, he's going to have the grit. He's going to have the chin. He's not going to fold in this fight. And so, yeah, even though Jalin Turner, maybe he's more technical, Ignacio Bahamondes he's pretty technical, and he's very slick on the feet in a lot of ways. And so I'm going to take Ignacio Bahamondes here. I don't know if he's going to be able to knock out Jalin Turner, but if you have two guys who are both very good on the feet, good strikers, I'm just going to take the guy who has momentum and who's tougher and isn't going to quit. So yeah, Jalin Turner he's a weight bully. He needs to have the range. He needs to have the height advantage. He needs to be bigger than his opponent, or he kind of turns into a little pussy. So I'm going to take Ignacio Bahamondes, probably by decision, a hard-fought decision. But Jalin Turner's going to be fighting for his career. I mean, he's 14-8. He'd be 14-9 if he loses. So I do think he's going to come out here and he's going to try to finish the fight. It's not going to go well. And Ignacio Bahamondes is going to... no, I'm going to take him by knockout. I think Jalin Turner is going to end up folding in like the third round. So yeah, Ignacio Bahamondes by KO. Let's move on up the card. We have Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. This is the co-main event, and it's a 3-rounder. It got changed to a 3-rounder, but I didn't know this piece of information, but I guess Justin Gaethje asked or requested that it be turned to a 3-rounder before Dan Hooker dropped out of the fight. So he requested a 3-rounder, and then Dan Hooker, I don't know, a few days after that, said that he can't fight. So I don't know, maybe Justin Gaethje knew, maybe there were talks that before the public knew, maybe Justin Gaethje knew that there was going to be a replacement. And so he decided to change it, or decide to request to change it to a 3-rounder. Either way, I think that's a bad look. I don't know why Justin Gaethje would want to change it to a 3-rounder. My guess is because he's getting a little bit older. Maybe the thought of going 5 rounds just doesn't sound very good, fun to him. Maybe he has some injuries. So I don't think that's a great look. I'm going to take Rafael Fiziev here, coming in on short notice. I think Justin Gaethje might be done. And I don't like some of the interviews that he's done recently, the way he's talking. He's like, if I get knocked out again, I'm probably going to retire. He's talking about how we're not going to see him for much longer. And I know that fighters can just say stuff like that, but Justin Gaethje he's taken so much damage in his career. He's gone to so many wars, and he's never been flatline KO'd. He got flatline KO'd by Max Holloway in that fight. And it wasn't just that. It was 24 minutes and 59 seconds of damage taking damage, and then he got flatline KO'd, and he got his nose busted in that fight again. I just think coming into this fight, about a year later, he took time off. When you're 36 years old in the lightweight division, and you take a lot of damage throughout your career, and then you finally get flatline KO'd, I don't think his chin's going to be the same. I don't necessarily think Rafael Fiziev is just going to knock him out cold, but I don't know that Justin Gaethje is going to be able to take damage the same. I don't know if he's going to be able to take shots the same. In that last fight, in the first fight they had, that was a very close fight. They could have given it to Rafael Fiziev. Like, I think if that happened, I don't think you could call it a big robbery. That was a very close fight. And I think in this fight, Rafael Fiziev, just like in their first fight, if he's going to come in here, throw nasty combinations, throw leg kicks, he's very dangerous. I don't think he has the most power. Like, Rafael Fiziev's power, I think, is a little overrated. He kind of just sounds like he has power, looks like he has power when he's fighting, but he does have some power. And I think Justin Gaethje is not going to be able to take shots the same. So I think Rafael Fiziev is going to come in here, guns a-blazing. I think Justin Gaethje is going to be the most patient we've ever seen him. He tends to be more patient after getting rocked or after getting knocked out. So I think he's going to come in here very patient. And I think Rafael Fiziev is going to draw him into a war. He's going to land some nasty body kicks. And I think he's going to end up knocking out Justin Gaethje. And I think this is the end of Justin Gaethje. I don't like this fight for him. That last fight was very, very close. So if anything, Rafael Fiziev's coming in here. He's taken a year and a half off after an injury. I think he's going to be fresh. He was looking for a fight. Apparently no one would take a fight with him. So he's been staying ready. So I don't think he's coming in here off the couch. He's going to be in shape. And their last fight was so close. And I don't think Justin Gaethje like has the advantage in the rematch. I think Rafael Fiziev has the advantage. And I love Justin Gaethje, but he's 36 years old and he just got KO'd out cold. He was on the ground for a while after that knockout. And he's been in so many wars as well. And it was the fact that he took so much damage for the 24 minutes before that knockout. So I don't like this fight for him. And so I'm going to take Rafael Fiziev by knockout. I'm going to say that it's kind of a patient first round for Justin Gaethje. Rafael Fiziev hasn't been in there for a while. He's going to maybe be a little more patient. And I think it's going to start to speed up in the second round. They're going to both be throwing some shots. And Rafael Fiziev is going to knock out Justin Gaethje. I don't think he's going to knock him out cold. I think Justin Gaethje is going to get rocked. He's going to be getting hit with a lot of shots up against the cage. And I think the ref's going to stop it. And Justin Gaethje is going to be kind of complaining like, come on, man, I wasn't out. But it's going to be a very justified stoppage. So yeah, Rafael Fiziev by knockout. Moving on to the main event, we have Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Come on, guys. I see a lot of people taking Magomed Ankalaev. No one stands a chance on the feet with Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is going to knock out Magomed Ankalaev. Unless you're Israel Adesanya, who is a very good kickboxer, came from a kickboxing background, you're not going to be able to stand on the feet with Alex Pereira. We see all of these guys that come in to fight him. We have Yuri Prochazka. We have Khalil Roundtree, Jamal Hill. These guys all say, I'm going to strike with Alex Pereira and I'm going to knock him out and I'm going to prove that I'm the better boxer. And they come in and they get knocked out. I know Magomed Ankalaev is saying that he's not going to wrestle. He's saying that he's going to strike with him and he's not going to shoot a takedown. I don't think that's true, but I wouldn't be surprised, man. Magomed Ankalaev is not really a wrestler. And when he starts to wrestle, it's usually in the later rounds. And it's like we saw in his fight against Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz was chewing up his legs big time. Like, I think a couple more shots, Ankalaev's leg would have fallen off. That fight would have been over. That's when Magomed Ankalaev decided to go to the wrestling, when his leg was getting chewed up. I think that's low IQ. I don't think that's very smart of him. And going up against Alex Pereira has some of the best leg kicks in the game. I don't think his leg kicks are as pound for pound strong. You know, his leg kicks are very sneaky and they are powerful. And I think the power that he's able to generate from his leg kicks in comparison to how sneaky they are, I think it's very impressive. And I think that he's going to be fine kicking the legs of Magomed Ankalaev. Magomed Ankalaev has terrible leg kick defense. He's not really a wrestler and he's an okay boxer. He has a pretty good straight left, which I think is going to be key for him, at least on the feet. We saw Khalil Roundtree land some really good straight lefts. And so I think Ankalaev's going to have to try to land those shots and probably try to get some leg kicks of his own. And a lot of people talk about southpaws. They're like, Alex Pereira is going up against a southpaw. He struggles big time with them. He's not going to be able to land his leg kick. I think that's bullshit. We've seen him be able to land leg kicks on everybody. Israel Adesanya is a stance switcher. He won the leg kick battle against Israel Adesanya, who is the leg kick guy. He landed some very good leg kicks against Jan Blachowicz in that fight. Yuri Prochazka, Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree. A lot of these guys either switch stances, or you have Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree who are southpaws. And Alex Pereira, if he's not going to throw his back leg as much, he's going to throw his front leg. And he has very good kicks with his front leg. And Ankalaev is going to get his legs chewed up. Against Alexander Rakic, he was getting his legs chewed up in that first round. And I kind of thought, man, I think Rakic is going to win this fight when that first round happened. And then Magomed Ankalaev started kind of getting his groove. But Rakic is just a guy who has no power in his hands. He folds as the fight goes on. He gives up. Like, he just gave up against Yuri. He started running away from Magomed Ankalaev. Like, Rakic is a good win, but the thing with Alex Pereira is even if he does get taken down and he's losing, he always finds a way to get back up and to make things happen on the feet. He is not going to give up. He's not going to be like Israel Adesanya in the 5th round against Strickland, backing up, just hoping for the fight to be over. Against Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira he did get taken down. That was nearly 2 years ago. So Alex Pereira is going to be much improved since that time, at least on the ground. And Jan Blachowicz, yeah, he took him down. He didn't do a lot with it. He didn't land a lot of damage at all. And Alex Pereira, the reason he won that fight was because he would get up and he would start pressuring Jan Blachowicz right away. And that was at elevation. They were both tired, and Alex Pereira knew exactly what he had to do. He would get up, pressure him, throw some nice kicks, throw some good shots to the body, to the head. And I think if Magomed Ankalaev, if his game plan is to only wrestle, I think he can beat Alex Pereira, and I think that it's probably going to be a dominant decision. But that's not who he is. He's not a wrestler. I don't think he's going to come in here and at least wrestle early. I think if he does wrestle, I think it's going to be because he's finding out he doesn't have any success on the feet. And striking with Alex Pereira, dude, Magomed Ankalaev could have 15 minutes of control time. But those 10 minutes, when they're on the feet, Alex Pereira will find a way to knock out Magomed Ankalaev. I don't think Magomed Ankalaev is amazing. A lot of people are saying he's the uncrowned champ. He beat Jan Blachowicz. That's debatable. That's very debatable. He beat Alexander Rakic in his last fight. Then he beat Johnny Walker before that. Like, come on, dude, Johnny Walker? Everyone knocks out Johnny Walker. My freaking sister did that a couple weeks ago. Then he beat Jan, and it was a tie with Jan Blachowicz. A lot of people thought he won, whatever. And then he beat Anthony Smith. I don't care what anyone says. Anthony Smith, they're saying that was during his prime days. Anthony Smith didn't have a prime, dude. He just always loved to get hit in the head. And Anthony Smith folded in that fight in the 2nd round. That's when he started to just lean up on his knees against the cage. Like, I don't like Magomed's resume. I don't think his resume is very good at all. And you look at Alex Pereira's resume. Alex Pereira is beating Khalil Roundtree, Yuri Prochazka twice, Jamal Hill, Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland, and he doesn't have nearly as much experience. And he's going to be improving a ton on the ground. He's training with Glover Teixeira. He's getting better. He has that aura about him. And I think a lot of people think that this is going to be his toughest test. Man, I don't think Ankalaev has much for him on the feet. And we've seen Ankalaev. Here's the biggest thing. Ankalaev has really bad defense at times. And he's going up against these guys I just named off the resume. He's going up against guys who can't take advantage of it. Ankalaev drops his lead hand so many times in so many fights. He drops his lead hand against guys like Alexander Rakic, who was countering him at times. He just doesn't have the power to put him away. Johnny Walker was backing up, just leg kicking, waiting to get knocked out. Jan Blachowicz leg kicked him to death, landed some really good counter shots on him. So these guys can't counter him the way that Alex Pereira can. Alex Pereira has that power, he has that left hook, and everyone seems to be surprised by it. I think everyone seems to be surprised by how much power he can generate in that hand, and I think it's surprising to a lot of people that he doesn't need a ton of wind-up to get the left hook on your chin and to knock you out. So I think Magomed Ankalaev is going to come in here. He's going to start throwing. I think he's going to land a couple good straight lefts, land some good leg kicks, but Alex Pereira is going to be landing really good leg kicks back. I think Ankalaev is going to realize how strong or how powerful Alex Pereira is. He's going to realize how fast he is. and I think he's going to end up going to the takedown in the late first round or early in the second round. I think he's going to get it, but Alex Pereira is very good at surviving, man. Like, he's not going to get submitted. He is very good at surviving. So even if he gets laid on for the whole round, every round starts on the feet. But I think he's going to end up getting back up. They're going to be landing some good shots. And I think in the third round, Ankalaev's legs are going to be chewed up. And I think he's going to go for sort of a desperation takedown. And I think Alex Pereira is going to land a left hook on his way in, putting down Ankalaev. Ankalaev's going to be kind of wrapping up the legs. And Alex Pereira is going to just be punching his head. And the ref's going to stop it. And I think there's going to be a little bit of controversy. I think a lot of people are going to say that was an early stoppage. It's going to be a controversial... I think it's going to be a controversial stoppage, right? I think that's going to happen. So yeah, these are the picks. I'm very excited for this fight. I hope Alex Pereira wins. I don't think Ankalaev would be a very active or exciting champion. He's been talking a lot online. I think Alex Pereira is going to school him on the feet. So yeah, those are the picks. Please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. I only have a few videos up on my channel, but I'm going to be doing a lot of different fun things on the channel. So please like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next one. Peace.